Welcome to the B Block Podcast. I am your host, Brandon Scott. Appreciate y'all for being here. I've got a good show for you planned. Did an interview. I don't even like calling it an interview. Had a conversation with my guy, John Hickman. John, some sports guy Hickman, friend of the show, co-host of the Locked On Texans podcast with Big Sarge. And look, we had planned to do this before we had gotten the news earlier in the week of Mario Edwards being suspended for 4 games, before we had gotten the news of Cam Akers being traded from the Texans back to the Minnesota Vikings. And of course, we got the big headlines across the NFL with the wide receiver movement from Tuesday. So we got into all of that throughout this conversation. I think that you'll really enjoy it. I appreciate John for being with me. It's always a good time to talk with him. So here is that conversation right here. So, John, I'm real glad that you're joining me. And one of the reasons why I think you and I connect so well is because it feels like we come from a similar place, whether it's just like a sensibility or like an experience or whatever it is. But I will point out, though, one of the things that I feel like really make us friends, aside from the fact that, you know, we've hit it off in the years that we've known each other, is if I asked you to either house sit for me or to check on my house while I'm out of town, and you see that my air conditioner is running, and maybe it's running lower than what you think it should run, maybe at either a temperature that's lower than you think it should be running, or maybe you might even, and this is a part of friendship, sometimes you got to take initiative and act on behalf of your friend and just do what you know to be right. You might even take it upon yourself, depending on when you know me to be coming back. You might even turn that bad boy off.
Yeah, I'm cutting it. If I know you doing a turnaround trip somewhere, like you left at 8 that morning and you plan to be back by 7, I'm leaving the AC on. But if I know you gone for a while, I'm calling you. Hey man, you know you left your air on? What's up with this? And I'm cutting the air off.
What is it about the Black experience that we are just like, or let me ask it this way, actually. Is this a cultural thing, or do our white brothers and sisters, I'm very curious about this, because this feels like a very uniquely Black experience to just be very mindful of when the AC is running, cut them lights off when you leave the room. You know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna be honest with you.
We don't need that water running too long.
Yeah, like, is you gonna get? I see you ran the water. Is you gonna take that bath or not? You know what I'm saying? Like when are you gonna jump in? I'm gonna be honest with you, man. Like, I just moved into a new crib, and I got my new lady here, and she is one of those who is like super, super anal about the lights being on. So like the kids leave the lights on. She's like, the kids left the lights on. They left the house with the lights on. Don't be running that AC all day. That type of energy, man.
I think it's a couple things. Number one, I do want to say that if it's in between the months of June, July, and August, I may leave that AC running, specifically between July and August. But I think it's a Southern Black thing. We don't got too much time to be wasting. And water, we ain't wasting no water. My grandmother did not play about wasting no water. We not wasting no lights. If you don't need them, cut them off. We ain't got the money for them. Which is funny is now I think, I may have the money for it.
That's my thing.
I'm still, hey, man, cut these lights off.
And that's the thing I'm trying to like understand. Like, okay, I'm hoping that I don't disconnect from that initial sensibility, because like now, I'm gonna be honest, man, I'm at a point where like I don't really just be like caught up on how much is the light bill, how much is the water. There was a time in life where that mattered. I can thankfully say I'm at a space where like I do care, but I'm gonna pay whatever the bill is.
It's getting paid.
It's getting paid. I'm gonna pay it. It's like, so I'm not really stressed. I'm not like trying to nickel and dime the electricity bill like maybe I was before, or like maybe I was taught to do. but it's something about having that in you, knowing like even if I got the money, you got the money, I'm checking on your house, you checking on my house, we both good. We
Yeah.
both financially good. But it's like, hey man, you know your air on? You know you left this closet light on? Is that okay? Are you okay with that? Like that,
I,
like to me, that is a core sensibility that I feel like you gotta have.
you know what I think is funny that we can compare to it? And again, we're from the South. My grandmother is almost 90. Uh, so I grew up around older people. It reminds me of road trips. I would see other family members or other people just stop at the McDonald's and get them something to eat, or stuff like that. But my grandmother, before we left the house, if you don't use the restroom right now, we not stopping until a couple hours down the road. We traveling to Louisiana. It ain't no stopping at McDonald's. I don't got McDonald's money. And I got older and realized y'all had McDonald's money, but y'all wanted us to eat on these sandwiches that
Yeah.
y'all made the night before. They've been, in the refrigerator, making sure they stay cool with the water and everything. So I think that's a very Southern thing that's kind of built into us because we learned it from our parents. They learned it from their parents. But that's like road trips for me. And I kind of catch myself sometimes. I got a little baby girl, and I hope I'm not like this as she gets older. But hey, man, I ain't doing a bunch of stopping. If you don't use the restroom before we leave, you may be SOL with me.
Yeah. Hey, and look, sometimes they got to learn the way we learn, you know. So that's
Hey,
that,
man.
that that's what it is. But I agree with you, it being a Southern sensibility. All right. So you are the co-host of the Locked On Texans podcast. Before we even address the new form of the show, I want to shout out Cody Davis because I don't know if I've done that since he got that job in Detroit. But Cody
Shout
Davis
out to
doing
my
his
brother.
thing. Your former co-host, a friend of both of ours, somebody that we root for eternally.
Yeah.
So just hoping that he's living his best. I know he is living his best life out there and doing his thing. But now you are doing the show, Locked On Texans, that is, with our guy, another guy that is
Yeah.
close to us, Big
We
Sarge.
we kind of keep it in house, don't we?
Yeah, we do. Keep it in the family. Keep it in the family for sure. So really loving the rhythm of that show already. It's like y'all didn't miss a beat. There was no adjustment that needed to be made because we already family. And so before we even get to the national news, I'm gonna just get this off top because this broke like we had planned to do this
Yeah.
before we knew that this news was gonna come or before this news actually happened. But the Texans traded Cam Akers
Very
back.
shocked.
Very, very surprised by this. And I understand why they would do this, especially if they feel good about the health of Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce. Of course, we saw how both of those guys performed against the Patriots in their win against the Patriots on Sunday. Both of them had 50-plus yard runs, had touchdowns. And so it looked really good with those guys. You could see how maybe that displaces Cam Akers, especially if they feel good about Dario Gubawale being their third back. But
Right.
what did you make of this move? What is the Locked On Texans, or at least one half of the Locked On Texans response to this, if you will?
So I don't think I'm gonna say that I'm shocked that they moved on. I think the shock for me is you moved on quickly from Cam Akers. I mean, when they've been on the field, Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce, and mainly Joe Mixon, Dameon Pierce really got a good opportunity this past Sunday to, get some touches. They've been, for the most part, impactful players for this offense. The problem has been, hey, listen, man, we've only seen you guys for about Dameon Pierce, including Sunday, 6 or 7 quarters. You know what I mean? Joe Mixon, about eight or 9 quarters, or 10 quarters altogether. And I thought that, with how everything has been going on with this team specifically, like I don't gotta look at the other 31 teams. With this team specifically, guys are just dropping right now. And that's just what it is. And we can't wait to see guys get back. But I thought that Cam Akers, who ran the ball, I think pretty well when he had the opportunity to run, I thought Cam Akers would have been a nice safety blanket for this team up until the trade deadline, where by that time, if Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce are still contributing how they contributed Sunday, it makes complete sense to move on from them. So I just think for me, it's the timing of it. and just looking at it like, man, you know what? Maybe they could have held on to him a little bit more to be 100% sure that both of those running backs will be able to close the year out. But I will say, I think Dameon Pierce's performance against a bad Patriot team, his best run since his rookie year, gave them the confidence to say, you know what, we can move on from Cam Akers while the iron is hot, and we can get something that's a little bit more meaningful back for him, which is a 2026 6th-round pick, which will probably be used. You know how Nick Casario is. He may trade that to get something else. So just another piece that he'll use.
Yeah, so I think the fact that he had any trade value, and my guy Seth Payne is Sports Radio 610 mentioned this on Twitter/X, that it's just cool that you could even have some trade value for a guy who has gone through the injury issues that Cam Akers has had. But you know what it made me think about, John? It made me think back to a couple of games ago, the Bills game now, when it seemed like Daria Gumbawale had sort of displaced Cam Akers, or at the very least, like they were sharing the load. I know that stood out to a couple of us watching the game in real time, and I wasn't as bothered by it as others seemed to be. Some of the others that were around me, because I thought Dari, for the most part, did a lot of the things that you want him to do. I think we understand what Dari is, and at times he's looked actually better than he ever has this year at various points. But it made me think of that, John. Like, okay, he's kind of like down there with Dare already. Like, it's not even clear. You get to that Buffalo game, and it's not even clear that he's your top back at that point, even though I thought he was still their most dynamic back at that point with no Joe Mixon and no Dameon Pierce. But it did make me think of, okay, if he's starting to trickle down on the depth chart, then maybe
Cam Akers, right?
Yeah, Cam Akers, that is. If Cam Akers is starting to trickle down on the depth chart, now all of a sudden this is a player he's more useful than what you're using him for, if that makes sense, right? Does that make sense? Like, it seems like he was a more useful player than what he was going to be for them.
And I think, to your point, man, so again, Dameon Pierce, I think, gave them the confidence to say, you know what, thank you, Cam. We appreciate you coming in. I mean, he was a late training camp ad. I remember being at training camp and I saw him working out. I was like, man, who was that? But they work out far away. You can barely see. Coming to find out it's Cam. But to your Dare point, I think Dare is probably the perfect third down back for Houston.
Yeah.
In that RB3 role. I mean, they still got J.J. Taylor on the practice squad if they need a body to call up at that running back position. But I think for Dare, number one, he does a multitude of things, special teams kind of guy. This is a team that rewards players in that role, right? We've seen them do that with Rex Burkhead and other players. So I think you look at that aspect that he's going to bring to this team, that he does bring, and also the fact that who do you trust out there if you need to pick up 7 yards and it's a passing situation, and you're not trying to have Joe Mixon out there, you're giving him a break, or Dameon Pierce isn't out there, you're giving him a break. Who has shown to be able to do that for this team? And it's been Dare, right? The big game against the Buffalo Bills. I think that was the game where he had over 50 receiving yards. Was that the game?
Are we not thinking about Jacksonville?
That may be the Jacksonville Jaguar game.
Yeah.
One of those games where he stepped up and was like, you know what, man? When those guys do get healthy, this is the type of player he can be. And I also think right now he's a better blocking running back as well. So the emergence of what he's been able to be for the Texans and the health from mainly Dameon Pierce, I do think made Cam Akers expendable. Again, I just was shocked that it happened so fast.
Let me ask you, since we're talking about running backs, Joe Mixon and what he adds, what he brings. I think that by the end of this, and look, during the offseason, going into the season, I thought that Danielle Hunter would be the most valuable addition, the biggest new addition to the Texans. I'm already ready to change my tune on that and say that it's Joe Mixon, especially when you look at the difference in this run game. When he was that
over Aziz?
Look, this is a good problem to have, and I think this is a great debate to have. Aziz, I think is a good one. But the thing about it is, Henry To'oTo'o's emergence and the fact that Christian Harris is going to come back at some point, we don't know when, But at some point, Christian Harris is going to come back. Like I think that you have other linebackers that can do some of the things that you want them to do within the framework of this defense. Whereas there are two players, really three players on this team that you cannot replicate to me. And they are obviously CJ Stroud, okay? And then they're Nico Collins and Joe Mixon. Like there's just not another receiver like that is like Nico Collins on the team that's that big, that fast, and that sure-handed, right? There's just not another one like him.
I
And
agree.
then Joe Mixon, just a totally different like creature of a running back. And like it just to me, it was just so obvious. So obvious. What do you think about what the Texans look like with and how
Man,
different they look with Joe Mixon in the
man,
mix?
just a complete team offensively. And I'm saying that, and I don't think we've seen this team complete yet altogether. Right? Bodies have been out, guys have been out. Joe Mixon has been out, and the Houston Texans, for the most part, fared well while he was out. But Joe Mixon allows that offense to expand the playbook. For a play caller, we've talked about this on the phone. For a play caller that has his limitations in terms of sequencing and breaking away from the script of plays that he wants to establish the game with. So Joe Mixon allows for this team to kind of bring out the best in Bobby. And he also, as a runner, I went back and looked at some of the stats, including and excluding, but mainly excluding Joe Mixon, the amount of times the Houston Texans no gain or loss of yards on first down, second down. So he allows this team to have a successful running back in the NFL that knows how to win, hard to go down. He's going to fall 4 for 4 yards and allow them to not play from behind the sticks. And I think that's a blessing to have when you have a offense that's, second-year quarterback and CJ Stroud, stud quarterback, and all of those weapons on the outside. This team has been hindered for the last couple of seasons because of the inability to run the ball. And now you have Joe Mixon dropped into that mix with all of the other talent that's on that offense. It allows them to kind of expand their offensive world.
For sure. And I'll just add this is kind of a non X's and O's type of take, but I'll just add this from being around it a little bit. And Sarge could speak to this. It would be great to have him chime in on this point that I'm about to make. But I'm gonna just say this, John. Joe Mixon also brings like an
Swag.
attitude, like an attitude and an edge
Yeah.
that and I've said this in a number of places already, but I'm gonna say it again, that I would like for the entire team to adopt. And I'm not saying that they don't have it. I'm just saying I want
Especially the offensive line.
especially the offensive line. And what I'm saying is I would like for it to rub off as much as it possibly can on the rest, like that energy. And like Joe Mixon has this edge about him where like you're not necessarily afraid of him, but you are like he's somebody like you're kind of watching. Like, man, what's he gonna say? What's he gonna do? And if he gets upset, we're in trouble. Cause this dude is like big and strong, and like I say, kind of got like an edge to him. I feel like in football, especially, you want your team to have the type of attitude and edge that Joe Mixon brings. And like you said, especially the offensive line.
Especially the offensive.
Especially the
Damian
offensive
Pierce
line.
recently talked about Joe Mixon, and they asked about him in that addition to the room. And Damian has been here since 2022. And he mentioned like how competitive he is. He isn't like all in your face and just, angry with it, but the competitive nature and edge that he has, it comes out when he's on that field. And I also think the addition of Joe Mixon kind of puts a lot of ease to Damian Pierce's expectations to where he's going to fit into that RB2 role, which that's where he started his career off here in Houston, right? It just so happened Rex Burkhead was so bad, at the time where Damian was getting those carries. But his rookie year, he started off RB2. He was successful in that role, got the opportunity to start to finish out the year, started last year, lost the road to Devin Singletary. So now I think that puts Damian back in the place where he kind of was at Florida. I'm a
Yep.
part of a nucleus of running backs that can punch you in the mouth. We can fall forward for a few yards, and we're going to wear you down. and I got a guy in front of me that can do the same. And I can also do the same because the expectations I think are a little bit more realistic for him. And I think he's playing behind a more complete offensive line now. These guys are starting to play with each other more and more, so we'll start seeing more and more better versions of Dameon Pierce too.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned Florida because he was a part of a committee there. That was even a conversation piece when he was drafted. That he's a dude that has normally been a part of a committee and probably is at his best when he is, and that's not even a knock. There's nothing wrong with that. Like and I don't think, and I'm sure you would agree with this. I don't think you can have too many good running backs, right?
No, you can't.
You know what I mean? So like if you got a dude like Dameon Pierce who's your second or third back or whatever it is, I think you could do a lot worse than that. Let me ask you this. Life without Mario Edwards. I heard you and Sarge talking about this a little bit on the Locked On Texans podcast. And of course, y'all can get that wherever you get your podcasts and also check them out on YouTube as well. But life without Mario Edwards, as he is suspended for 4 games, this is a substance abuse violation that's being alleged. Slightly different from the 6-game suspension that Denico Autry had for a PED violation. We do not know anything about the substance or any of the details on why exactly Mario Edwards is said to have violated this policy. But the point is he will be out for 4 games, and the timing of it is interesting because this happens just as Denico Autry is available to return. And of course, we heard from D'Amico Ryans earlier in the week saying that Denico Autry would be practicing. Right. And so I would be surprised if he didn't play, even if not on a limited snap count. We'll see how that plays out. But I'd be surprised if we don't at least see him out there. What are your thoughts on Texans life without Mario Edwards as Denico Autry returns?
I find it so funny the amount of, jokingly, of course, conspiracy theories that are floating around. The NFL don't want the Texans to be great. And it's like, no, guys got to monitor what goes into their bodies.
Hey, us against the world, baby. It's us, hey, H-Town, us against the world.
That's I'm not mad at that because once it gets to December, January, all those guys should be back. And then that's when you're going to get a full throttle Texans team. But I think for Denico, man, he just gives Houston that opportunity to get off the field on third downs more. I think that's especially going into this week when they're going to be taking on the Green Bay Packers. I can see him on a limited snap count because they got guys that's been performing well. Tim Settle, Foley, who's been holding it down, Khalil Davis, who has had his moments. They activated Kurt Hinish, so he'll be back for Houston. Right now, you're going to throw Denico Autry in that mix, and we know he's an inside-outside guy. I think that he does give Houston a better opportunity because he's that savvy vet that has been successful in this league to just make sure that offenses are not being able to kind of establish rhythm on them and have those 9, 10, 11 play drives. They're able to get off the field because he's back there causing that pressure, which is something this team really loves. So I hate that Mario Edwards ain't playing for the next 4 games. Because he played phenomenal Sunday, and maybe that's what kind of ticked it off. Like, oh, hold on, Mario, you ain't played like that ever. We need to see what's going on in that DNA and that blood. But losing him is not as bad as it would have been if there was no Denico Autry. And he's coming back right on time. So I don't think the Texans miss a beat, really.
Yeah, and the thing that I really like the most about what they've done with the defensive tackle position, and I had my questions about it going in, but the way it's played out, watching training camp and then watching them through these first 6 games of the season is I love the way that they play with the outside guys, right? Like we understand Will Anderson had the game of his life against the Patriots on Sunday, and Danielle Hunter had the strip sack that was, I would say, a game changer or was – to me, the beginning of when it became a route for the Texans, when they're able to get that strip sack. So they impacted the game. But going into that game, there was a question of, hey, why aren't these guys getting home? We see the pressure rates. We see a lot of the advanced stats that says that they're doing well, but they're not getting home. They're not getting that one number that we all know that they want. But and this is not a knock or to discredit what the interior guys have been doing. But a lot of what they've been able to do, I feel like, has to do with the attention that those guys on the outside have drawn. Like 100%. The attention and what they're even able to do within that. Like we watch Will Anderson, and I think it's a lot, and Daniil Hunter is a similar way because of the motor. They're either getting double teamed or getting held, but there's still a problem within the play, and it's opening up opportunities for some of those guys on the inside. And I think that Denico Autry, like Mario Edwards, different types of players, okay, but I think similar in the sense of like savvy vet type that knows how to take advantage of the guy on the outside getting as much attention as these guys are getting, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely. And I think the IDL inside D lineman for the Texans, they've allowed for the edges to make some plays on the outside, looking at some of the quarterbacks that they've had to face. But I think that they've done a very good job of allowing these linebackers to have easier jobs on the field too. So I think that's where there may be some concern. Like, okay, Mario Edwards was a part of that group that allowed those linebackers to flow in and out of those gaps. Jalen Petrie as well, when he's crashing down, how long will it take for Denico to pick that up and fit into what this defense is looking forward to? But again, he don't got to go out there and start. Khalil Davis is in that bunch. And he's been playing some good football for Houston. Him and Tim Settle can rotate in and out, and they could be successful. And when we're looking at 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, okay, Denico, you, Will, Daniil, y'all figure it out.
All right, let's get you out on this, on a national topic. We've got some wide receiver trades that
I hate the
really
Jets.
they really shook up the AFC. And I know you're a Patriots fan, so I can understand your hatred for the Jets. But honestly, it's confusing to me because it's like, man, the Jets are like the little brother or the worse than that. Like, I mean, they do not even compare. But tell me, why is it? Which of these wide receiver shakeups bothers you the most, and why is it Davante Adams going to the Jets?
I hate the Jets because I just really hate Aaron Rodgers. That's what it is. And honestly, I've been an Aaron Rodgers fan pretty much his entire career up until the last couple of years. And you start to see Aaron Rodgers for who he is. And, firing Robert Saleh the way they did, that didn't sit well with me. Bringing over guys like Nathaniel Hackett when we know he's not a good whatever he is, giving everything over to Aaron Rodgers, not drafting offensively well. Just all of the things that the Jets do, it bothers me. And to see Aaron Rodgers, who has been a shell of his former self, we just saw it on Monday Night Football where you could have checked down and picked up the first down, but your ego wanted you to throw the ball downfield, and that led to interception. To give everything over to Aaron Rodgers for a guy who has not won a Super Bowl in how long?
Oh, almost 15 years.
MVP, yes. Great. Those MVPs, I guess, matter. They do. But what has showed you that makes you believe that, hey, Davante Adams is the missing piece and that Aaron Rodgers will be able to use Davante Adams to get us over the hump when he had Davante Adams in Green Bay and he still wasn't able to get over the hump? So I just really dislike Aaron Rodgers as a player. I hate the Jets as a staff, record label, the whole nine, man. They suck. I pray they never succeed in football life until Woody Johnson is out the door, out the paint, until Aaron Rodgers is out the paint. And I hope Garrett Wilson can come to another team and succeed because they're completely messing up that man. He was a 1,000-yard receiving had seasons with Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
You can't make it work with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers can't make it work with you. I hope they fail. I hope they never succeed.
Yeah.
When I go to bed tonight, I'm gonna pray to God above.
Hey,
watch off my kid, my wife. Never let the Jets succeed as long as I'm alive and Aaron Rodgers is a New York Jet.
I think that your life, the evidence of throughout your lifetime is enough to show you that they
look how they did Geno Smith.
I mean, they more than likely will not, John. Like throughout most of your life, they have been mostly pitiful. I thought about this when I was watching, was it maybe Seattle and San Francisco? But either way, I was watching Seattle. I was watching Geno, and I thought, who the Jets could really use? Geno Smith. The Jets might be. I don't think they were a Davante Adams away from being relevant or contenders. And I'll just say this off top: they have bored the hell out of me. I have not been into the Aaron Rodgers story, the Jets story. It is
It's
just
been
has
so
nothing.
whack.
It's done nothing for me. Now, this trade does move the needle for me a little bit. Like, is it Davante Adams? Like, it does make them finally interesting a little bit. But man, I thought the Jets aren't a Davante Adams away. They are a Geno Smith away. You know, they're a non-washed quarterback away. They are a credible offensive coordinator away. Like that's actually what they need to kind of get over the hump. It's not Davante Adams, even though I do think that's going to make them at the very least more interesting. I don't think Davante Adams is necessarily the player that he was when they were together in Green Bay, and I don't think that Aaron Rodgers certainly is not
He is
the
not.
player that he was in Green Bay, but Davante Adams is at least closer to that, like closer to that player. I think his fall off would be marginal compared to what Aaron Rodgers is. But in terms of success, John, and I don't think any prayer to the Lord is wasting his time. But man, don't waste his time with this one, man.
I gotta make sure. I gotta
The
make
Jets
sure
be
it
the
happens.
Jets.
I gotta make sure that he knows that. Hey, listen, my child, you've been working hard. What the Bible says, ask and you shall receive. I'm just trying to receive more disappointment from the Jets. But I will say I think the Buffalo Bills may be better off because they got that run game down pack. I mean, Ray Davis, I was a fan of, come out of Kentucky, stepped in and they didn't miss a beat against the New York Jets, right? Amari Cooper does give, I think, Josh Allen over, once they get on the same page, gives him that playmaker at receiver that they just lack right now. And it allows Curtis Samuel to go back into a role where he's more familiar in wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. But I also think Amari gives Keon Coleman some ways to learn how to win at the NFL level because he's been, not the dog on him, but he's been pitiful so far. Was not necessarily a big fan of Keon Coleman coming out of college. And when he went to Buffalo, and I don't know why they didn't draft Xavier Worthy, but when he went to Buffalo, I thought to myself, the expectations on that young man is going to be extremely high, and everybody's going to be disappointed because right now he's not coming into the league as a wide receiver 1, like Marvin Harrison Jr. Did, or Malik Neighbors, guys like that. That's not him. So now you get a receiver in Amari Cooper that has been a wide receiver 1. And I think Amari been playing like how he's been playing because he just wanted to get out of Cleveland. So maybe with a rejuvenated offense and play caller and Joe Brady, we see a different version of Amari. And that allows for the expectations for Keon to kind of come down to reality. And the fact is, maybe they need to play him in a slot a little bit more. Find some of those matchups. Maybe that he's right now a wide receiver 3 for that team, and he can grow into a better role. But I like Amari to Buffalo more than I like Davante Adams to New York. But that may be because I like Josh Allen right now way more than I like the hip head Aaron Rodgers. And I got a lot of other words I can say, but I like him more than Aaron Rodgers right now.
John Hickman, Locked On Texans, doing his thing with Big Sarge. Make sure y'all check them out. You can catch that anywhere that you get your podcast, and also catch them on YouTube. My brother, I appreciate you for being here, man.
Thank you for having me. The next time we get together, we gotta do us. You know what I mean? We ain't talking no music. I know we pressed for time. We ain't talk none of the other stuff. So the next time I'm on the B Block podcast, I'm posted up. I ain't going nowhere for a while.
Definitely, man. Because I got so much that I wanted to. Matter of fact, since we are here, I was going to ask you this: you gonna take your lady to the Maxwell concert this weekend or not? Like I ran it by this way, and if I'm messing up a surprise or blowing up the spot, we can edit this out. But I realized, like, hey man, that's the date opportunity. You gotta at least gotta come up. And I was surprised that mine didn't want to go. But are you gonna be?
We're not
are you
going
be
to
in the
Maxwell.
house?
We're not going to Maxwell, but Fantasia and them come in December. So now that one, I may have my shades on, I may have my cheeks high, but we at the Fantasia concert.
Yeah, Fantasia puts on the show. Have you seen her in person before?
I have not. I've always
Oh
seen
my,
like some of her live like performances and
oh
stuff.
my God.
But I love Fantasia. Fantasia has a place in my heart that cannot be replicated or
Let me tell you, John, she's not gonna shortchange you. She gonna give you everything she got. I saw her Essence Festival. Maybe this might have been 10 years ago now. But man, she gives everything she's got. Everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
We're gonna be
everything.
at Fantasia.
For sure. All right, man. We'll talk music the next time we do this. But that's John Hickman, Locked On Texans. Make sure y'all are locked in to Locked On Texans and what John Hickman and Big Sarge got going on. Appreciate you again, my brother.
Thank you for having me.